Ollama, GLM 5.2, and Qwen 3.8 all get thrown into the same best local AI searches, but only two of them are actually models you can score. Here's the surprise. The free option wins the cost test outright, while the two paid models split everything else almost exactly down the middle, with one of them landing a 30 to 12 beatdown on the other in a head-to-head coding test. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly which one deserves your GPU, your API key, or neither. Ollama costs $0. It's open source, MIT licensed, and there's no per token fee at all, because it doesn't generate anything itself. It just runs whatever model you load on your own hardware. That's the trade-off nobody says out loud. Free software, but you're still buying or already own the GPU. GLM 5.2 and Qwen 3.8 are both self-hostable too, under MIT and Apache 2.0 respectively. So technically, all three can run at $0 if you've got the memory for it. GLM 5.2 charges 1.40 per million input tokens and 4.40 per million output tokens on ZAI. Qwen 3.8 charges $2 per million input and $6 per million output. Run 10 million input tokens a month on GLM 5.2, and you're looking at roughly $14. Qwen costs 50% more on the same input volume. Ollama wins this test outright because free beats cheaper. But if you're choosing between the two paid APIs, GLM 5.2 is the one that doesn't nickel and dime you. But most people are hitting these through an API, and that's where the gap shows up. My name is Brian, and I spend most of my week digging through AI products, benchmarks, APIs, and pricing pages to figure out where these tools actually differ. This is where Ollama drops out completely. It's a runner, not a model, so it has no benchmark score of its own. Whatever score you get depends entirely on which weights you load into it. Between GLM 5.2 and Qwen 3.8, the vendor numbers favor Qwen 3.8 max across the board. On SWE Bench Pro, Qwen scores 67.7% against GLM 5.2's 62.1%, a 5.6 point lead. On Terminal Bench 2.1, Qwen hits 86.6% against GLM's 81.0%, the same 5.6 point gap. Both of those are vendor reported, so treat them as marketing until something independent backs them up. One of the biggest problems I run into when using AI agents is turning their output into YouTube content I can actually use to market my product. That's why this video is sponsored by Subscriber, a tool that helps business owners connect their AI agents to YouTube and market their products without spending 10 hours every week creating content. You can connect Claude or ChatGPT directly to Subscriber. It then analyzes your business, website, and YouTube channel to help you create SEO-optimized video ideas, scripts, thumbnails, and even complete videos that actually match your brand. What I like most is that every week, Subscriber gives me a list of high-potential video ideas I can immediately execute, and it can even help edit videos for me, with or without my face, including videos like the one you're watching right now. It's easy to get started, and you can try Subscriber for free using the link in the description below. Now back to the video. That independent backup exists though, and it's the number that actually settles this test. On Goldie Bench's head-to-head matchup, a measured, independent comparison, Qwen 3.8 beats GLM 5.2 by 30 wins to 12. That's not a rounding difference. Qwen 3.8 wins coding. Worth noting, for context, GLM 5.2 still beats GPT 5.5 on SWE Bench Pro 62.1 versus 58.6, so it's not getting embarrassed here. It's just losing to the model in this specific matchup. That's a decisive margin from a source with nothing to sell you. Ollama, running locally on an RTX 4090, pushes 120 to 150 tokens per second on something like a Llama 3.8B model at Q4 quantization. That's a measured number and it's fast, but it's entirely capped by whatever card is in your machine. GLM 5.2 posts a median of 129.8 tokens per second across providers, according to Artificial Analysis, an independent tracker. Qwen 3.8 has no published figure in any of the sources I checked, which is the one honest gap in this entire comparison worth naming directly. GLM 5.2 takes this test on the strength of a verified, provider-measured number that neither of the other two can match. That's a real, verifiable figure, and it edges out Ollama's local ceiling even before you factor in GLM 5.2 Fast, a speed-tuned variant that Vercel lists at 540 tokens per second, though that number is vendor-claimed. Stick with me because the last 4 tests are where this decision actually flips. This one's a genuine tie, and the numbers back it up exactly. GLM 5.2 and Qwen 3.8 both advertise a 1 million token context window and cap output at 128,000 AI tokens per response. GLM's version is live natively. Qwen gets there through Yarin extension. Functionally identical. Ollama doesn't get a fixed number here because its limits are set entirely by whatever model you load. You can run a 128K model or a 1 million token model depending on what you need. Context and output limits, dead even between GLM 5.2 and Qwen 3.8. But flexibility isn't the same as a spec, so it doesn't beat a tie between two models that both hit the same number. That's a real advantage in flexibility. Qwen 3.8 Max is the only multimodal model in this comparison. It handles text, image, and video, running at 2.4 trillion parameters, and it speaks both OpenAI and Anthropic protocols, so it drops into existing tooling without much friction. GLM 5.2 is text only, but it's built for a narrower job and does it well. It integrates natively with 8 coding agents out of the box, which matters if your workflow is already agent-based. Ollama is still the easiest thing here to actually deploy. It runs locally on macOS, Windows, and Linux, with over 100 models available to load, no API key, no account. Qwen 3.8 wins this test on the strength of modality alone. Nothing else here does images and video. Ollama wins on cost, full stop, because free software plus your own hardware beats any per token rate. It also wins deployment simplicity, but it has no coding benchmark score of its own, since it's a runner, not a model. GLM 5.2 wins speed with a verified 129.8 tokens per second median, and it's the cheaper API at 1140 per million input tokens. It loses the coding benchmarks to Qwen 3.8 by a wide, independently measured margin. Now, GLM 5.2 wins speed with a verified 129.8 tokens per second median, and it's the cheaper API at 1.40 per million input tokens. It loses the coding benchmarks to Qwen 3.8 by a wide, independently measured margin. Qwen 3.8 is the default pick. It leads on both major SWE Bench Pro and Terminal Bench 2.1 scores. It's the only model here handling image and video input, and it backs all of that up with an independently measured 30-12 win over GLM 5.2 on Goldie Bench. That's not a vendor claim, that's a third party actually running the matchup. If you're on a tight budget, GLM 5.2 is the better lane, it's cheaper per token, and has the only verified SPE. Now, Qwen 3.8 is the default pick. It leads on both major SWE Bench Pro and Terminal Bench 2.1 scores. It's the only model here handling image and video input, and it backs all of that up with an independently measured 30-12 win over GLM 5.2 on Goldie Bench. That's not a vendor claim, that's a third party actually running the matchup. If you're on a tight budget, GLM 5.2 is the better lane. It's cheaper per token and has the only verified SPE. If this helped, the next breakdown on the channel goes even deeper.